The trade deadline is quickly approaching, but today we're going to take a way too early look at the buyout market. Which players could potentially hit the buyout market and be available after the trade deadline for a team to scoop up, essentially, for free. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you subscribe right here to the channel right now. Only about 20% of you watching this video are actually subscribed to the channel. So the other 80%, you guys know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. Joined by Donnie Freeman. Donnie, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, and I'm excited to talk about the buyout market. It's like you said, it's a little bit early, but nobody really talks about these guys all too much. And I think that this is something that is going to be a little bit different this year than people probably are thinking or expecting or should expect. But, there's going to be some fun names regardless.
Well, here's something to note first and foremost. So due to the new collective bargaining agreement, one of the wrinkles now is that teams that are above the first tier apron are not allowed to sign any player that's bought out that was making more than the mid-level exception. So essentially, any player that gets bought out that's making more than about $13 million, these teams would not be allowed to sign that player. Here's the teams. The Phoenix Suns, these are tier 2 apron teams. The Phoenix Suns, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Celtics, the Bucks, and then we get into the tier 1 apron teams. The Knicks, the Heat, the Lakers, the Nuggets, the 76ers. So that's a lot of teams. That's about a third of the NBA that cannot sign any player that's making more than $13 million once they get bought out. So we think about some of the buyout candidates in years past. We think about like a Blake Griffin, someone like that. That would not allow these teams to sign those players. So that's something to keep in mind, but there are, because typically buyout players are looking for two things. They're looking for playing time and a chance to win. They're looking for those two things because these are guys that are going to be playing for their next contract. Remember, the criteria for a buyout player, not officially per league policy, but typically what you see for buyout players, it's a veteran on the final year of their deal on a bad team. Usually you need those three things in order for a player to really be somebody that would be considered to be bought out. And Donnie, as you and I were talking about a moment ago, the other wrinkle to remember with all of these guys, their teams will not right now acknowledge that they could be bought out in the future because they're going to try to trade them first. And they don't want word to get out that they might buy out this player later on. And then no team would trade for the player if they think they can get him for free. So that's another thing here that we have to remember, that right now, teams are going to try to trade these guys. It's if they're not able to trade them by the February 6th trade deadline, that suddenly they flip to becoming a buyout candidate.
Yeah, definitely. It's all just really different than, like I was saying, people are expecting, because typically when you hear a buyout market, you're thinking, oh, this team's going to get this guy, maybe things like that. I don't even think we're going to get like a big contract, like just theoretically, like Ben Simmons, right? Because he's an expiring deal making $40 million. I don't even think he's going to get bought out, or a player like him. And even if he did, he wouldn't be able to go to a contending team, basically. There's a few, but not really. So
Right.
It's just a weird situation overall with the buyout market this year.
Well, and that's where the buyout market is maybe less attractive than it was in the past, because players have to give back money when they get bought out, and they might be less inclined to give back money if they know that there's not necessarily a team still sitting there that they want to go to. And that said, there are some interesting teams. The Warriors and the Mavs so close to their hard caps at the first tier apron that it's going to be really tough for them to sign a buyout player. But then when you look at some teams, Cleveland, they're great. They could sign a buyout player. Now, do they have a roster spot? That could be another question with some of these teams. But the Clippers, they've got some room there below that first tier apron. They could be a club that could go add somebody. The Pacers, the Kings, these are teams that could add players. The Grizzlies, the Houston Rockets, and oh my goodness, the Oklahoma City Thunder could add somebody on the buyout market as well. So there are some contenders to potentially look at.
Yeah, definitely. I think some of these teams, like the Magic, Spurs, the Thunder, they're going to try to make a push here, especially the Magic and the Thunder, in my opinion. Obviously, the Thunder, if they get word that a good player is getting waived, they should try to be in on it, because their time is now, in my opinion. So some of these teams are going to be really in on it. But yeah, just basically a third of the league can't even decide to get some of these guys. So definitely pretty tricky.
But let's kick it off here. We'll go with Lonzo Ball to start things out. Lonzo is making a comeback from a pretty significant knee injury, kept him out for more than 2 years. He didn't play NBA basketball, but he's on a $21.4 million expiring contract. Now, the Chicago Bulls, maybe they will try to go for it this year and still make the play in, That sound you hear is Bulls fans screaming in horror because the Bulls should be trying to bottom out so they can keep their pick. Right now, they have a top 10 protected pick in a very good draft class, but if it falls 11 or later, it goes to the San Antonio Spurs. And right now, it is projected to go to the Spurs. So could the Bulls decide to move on from Lonzo Ball? There's rumors that they would like to get some second-round draft capital for him on the trade market, but if they can't, maybe they do negotiate a buyout with him, get him off their roster just so he can't help them win games, and he could go land with a team that is trying to win and provide some help with some backcourt defense, and hopefully the three-point shot will come back around.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about Lonzo and how I am particularly very fond of him and what he could potentially do for a lot of teams. So hopefully that shot does come back, because I think that's going to be one of the big deciding factors as to whether or not he is moved or can help another team out if he is moved anyway. But again, he does need to get out there and play. Otherwise, because I think at that point, if he's out there playing, they're going to try to trade him. So that's kind of where he's at. Maybe he can show his value that way. But if things don't work out for him, yeah, he could be on the market regardless of how he performs.
Yeah, if they're not able to move him, then we could definitely see him on the move. The other guy, I feel like we're obligated to throw him in here, but it's so much money. It's so much money on the books. The Brooklyn Nets, Ben Simmons, he's a huge expiring contract, $40 million expiring deal for Ben Simmons. But if he were to get bought out, I think teams would have some interest in him just because of his defensive upside. No, he can't shoot. It's weird where he passes up shots at the rim, but he still is a good defensive player, can still pass the ball, maybe a tough fit. The challenge is, like, what would he have to give up money-wise in order to make that? And again, are the Nets going to do that? So he's a lot of money to just buy him out and just say, okay, well, we're going to, if you give back $3 million or something, which is what you're going to get on your veteran minimum deal somewhere else, then we'll let you go. But it has happened. I mean, we saw it with Blake Griffin in the past where he had big money left over on his deal and he still got bought out. So you never know, but Ben Simmons' expiring contract, the Brooklyn Nets are clearly going in a different direction. They're going to try to bottom out and get a nice high draft pick. So maybe he's the guy that winds up hitting the market.
Yeah, I feel like if they were, because he just got so much money there, if they did him a favor and were like, oh, just $3 million, it's because they either really like him or really want to get rid of him. Like, I just don't know which way that swings. So that's kind of a weird situation he's in. But yeah, Ben, he's a tricky guy because, I mean, he's going to have, no matter what team he goes to, he's going to have obviously the same issues, and he's going to get played off the court in a lot of high leverage situations. But he does have some upside, of course, with the passing, playmaking, defense, all that stuff. The rebounding is good for his size and the position he plays, but the offense is just such a negative that I don't really know a way past that. We've talked a lot about his contract number and what he could be on going forward. I'd be surprised if he even gets like the biannual exception from somebody, to be honest. He's going to take a massive cut. So with that being the case, I don't expect him to want to give anything back.
That's true. He was not going to get anywhere near this number on his next contract. Let's stay with the Nets. D'Angelo Russell, another interesting candidate. They just acquired him via trade. He was very, very good for them, yet they still lost against the Toronto Raptors. But D'Angelo Russell could wind up getting bought out and could find a new team to go to. I know there's been a lot of pushback against that. Oh, no, the Nets will not buy him out, all of that. It makes sense that they wouldn't buy him out for a couple of reasons. And really, this is true of Ben Simmons too, because even if they don't want to keep him, there's not a lot of cap space out there. And if D'Lo winds up being an above MLE player, if that's what he's valued at, then with no cap space out there, he would need to get that money via sign and trade. And then maybe the Nets could get something back for him this summer. But nonetheless, if it's just kind of resigned to, okay, he's a mid-level exception player, which a number of teams will have access to that this summer, then maybe they do just move on from him, say, you know what, we don't want to risk a D'Angelo Russell heater accidentally causing us to win too many games. They could flip him in another trade before the trade deadline, and I'm sure they will explore that option before the deadline. But if they can't figure that out, and if D'Angelo Russell's playing a little too well, maybe he winds up actually on the buyout market after all. But once again, I know there's reports saying that they won't buy him out. Whether or not that's the truth, they have to say that right now, because they're going to want to be able to flip him in a trade, and that's infinitely more difficult to do that if everybody believes that he's going to be available on the buyout market just a few weeks after the trade deadline.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. You talked about his contract number. Do you think anybody's giving him more than mid-level next year? Because I kind
I don't
of
think
don't,
so.
and that's not a like I don't think D'Lo sucks or anything like that. I'm
No.
actually higher on him than a lot of Laker fans were, but I just don't know that the market is there for him to get anything above that. And we kind of saw that over the last couple of years where he was kind of just forced to opt into the contract, right? So I'm really curious about that. I don't really know that he's going to get another upgrade on that either, but I think he's somebody that I'm hoping that eventually the playoff issues go away and he can finally like kind of get things together. Maybe on the right team where he's like your sixth option and you don't have any focus on him, it'll pop off that way for him. But maybe in the right situation, if he does wind up getting bought out, that could be useful and he can finally put that stuff behind him and have some success in the playoffs going forward. But that's more or less what I'm looking for him. But he'll be a good name to watch for on the playoff, on the buyout market. If you are a team like we talked about, like the Magic. Okay, so actually the Magic could be a really fun spot for him. There
Yep.
was some talk about him in the offseason potentially being a target for them. But yeah, if you're a team like that could use a little bit of playmaking and you've got room, then sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that could be of interest in the Orlando Magic, especially the number of injuries that team has dealt with. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, D'Angelo Russell, we'll see if he actually hits the buyout market or not. Again, if the belief is he's going to get more than the MLE, then he would need the help of the Nets in order to get it. Because right now it's just the Nets and the Wizards that are really going to have cap space this summer. So something to watch for. All right, let's stick it with the Nets. One more player, Bojan Bogdanovic. Look, he's not played this year. He's been out due to injury. He would have to come back and get on the court and show people what he's got and everything. But just to, just don't forget about him. If he does come back and he's able to get going, then he's an interesting off the bench scoring threat for somebody. But for right now, he hasn't played yet this season. So I would not expect to see him out there. But if he does return and play, maybe he's a name to pay some attention to.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's somebody that in theory could be really good on a number of teams as an off the bench scorer type. He could actually score in so many different ways. So I think he could be really useful for some teams, but he's not played yet. So can't really consider him for much beyond that.
Speaking of guys who aren't playing, PJ Tucker with the Clippers. He's actually away from the team. He's an $11.5 million expiring contract. So this is a player that's actually below the MLE. So anybody could pick him up if he gets waived. But the Clippers will try to use his expiring contract in a trade first. But I'll tell you what, it's fairly likely that whatever team actually gets him in a trade would just be getting him for an expiring contract anyway. So I think it's a high likelihood that PJ Tucker gets bought out. Even if he does get traded, just the receiving team would buy him out. Because I don't think anybody's trading for PJ Tucker right now. They'd more be trading for his expiring contract. But if you can get him for free on essentially a minimum contract, teams are looking for wing defense. I know he's 39. Has he lost a step? Probably a few steps. But I could see on a minimum salary where a team would say, you know what, maybe he gives us 5 or 10 minutes a night and we can get something out of him and gives him a look if and when he gets bought out.
Yeah, sure. I think that he can still go out there and maybe just camp in his corner like he usually does. Get you a couple threes every now and again. Give you a enforcer. Give you some toughness. A lot of teams could use that. And I wouldn't mind him on a lot of the teams that are above that apron. So he'd be nice for those teams. Just, again, in theory, because he's not playing. We don't know what he is this year. He is 39 years old. I mean, there are concerns and questions there, but PJ historically has been somebody that you can count on those things for. So,
all right, then we'll finish it up with Malcolm Brogdon, 32-year-old guard, oft injured guard for the Washington Wizards, but talented. I mean, he is a guy who can really help you win games. I do think the Wizards are going to do everything they can to trade him by the trade deadline. I think whoever trades for him, unlike PJ Tucker, whoever trades for him would not be trading for him as an expiring contract. They would be trading for him to play him because he can make a difference. 14 points per game so far this season, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. You've got 33% from three, but that's well below his career average. I believe that will go up when he gets more games played. 16 games played this year. He's typically a highly efficient guard that can do quite a bit for a team out there. You can see double-digit scoring his entire career. I think someone will trade for him. I don't think he will actually wind up on the buyout market. I think that he's good enough to where somebody's going to trade for him. But nonetheless, should the trade deadline come and go with no Malcolm Brogdon move, maybe he's the kind of guy that could get bought out. Again, similar to D'Angelo Russell, in that, is he really getting above MLE money? Probably not. And assuming that answer is no, well, then if he's not getting that, I don't know if Washington's going to see a lot of sign and trade opportunities there to hang on to him and then trade him over the summer. Again, could the Wizards re-sign him and keep him as a trade chip? Potentially. They'll have cap room to spend, so maybe they could do something creative there. But it's also possible that they decide to just do a solid by a veteran, move on from him. I think he's unlikely to get bought out, but if he were to get bought out, I would put him at or near the top of this list. Him or D'Angelo Russell, again, the two least likely guys to get bought out, I think, on this list, with Ben Simmons maybe. But Malcolm Brogdon and D'Angelo Russell, I think, would be the two best acquisitions if they were to hit the market, but I think they're unlikely to do so.
Yeah, I think Brogdon could be a nice playmaker off the bench for a number of teams. So if they decide to move on from him, I think there are going to be a lot of people interested just for Brogdon as well, because he's not somebody also that's going to come in and really change what you have to do all too much and rely on having the ball in his hands a ton all the time. And yeah, I think that his numbers will go up a bit. I was looking at his volume. I mean, he's taken like 2.5 less threes than he did even last year. So I do think that will come up. But do you think there's any sort of, I mean, I think this will always be the case for his career as it has been so far, but do you think maybe there's concern about him going forward in terms of health? Because I think they would probably prefer to trade him than buy him out, as he is a big expiring deal. So,
absolutely, they will definitely try to trade him. They would not want him. They don't want to go down. None of all these teams would like to be able to move their play and get some kind of asset back for them. It's just if they try to put these players on the market and the market says no, we don't have anything for this guy, that's where maybe they become buyout candidates. But yeah,
is anybody doing it? Like 22.5 million, Brogdon, health concerns, not been his usual self so far this season. Is anybody?
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, let's say actually an interesting partner would be like the Clippers. What if the Clippers were able to stack up that, the aforementioned PJ Tucker expiring salary plus a contract or so, and add in, I don't know, second round draft capital, maybe a heavily protected first, something like that, and get Malcolm Brogdon? Does that make the Clippers better? Does that give them a piece to help them try to make a run right now? Yep. And then the Wizards, they get an expiring in PJ Tucker. They just buy him out. And there you go. So I could see it if a team's got a player on their books that is just not really producing. I could see them flipping that player, turning them into Malcolm Brogdon, and then using him as a piece moving forward. So I do think he'll have value on the market. I think teams will be after him. I don't think he gets bought out, but should the trade deadline come and go and he's still a Washington Wizard, that's where suddenly it becomes a question. And even then, Washington may say, you know what, we're going to hang on to him just in case some team wants to sign him for $15 million a year over the summer, and they don't have the cap space for it, and they have to do a sign and trade, and then we can facilitate that and get something back for him.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense then. Yeah, I was just like the way I see it is that, like, I think that's a lot of money to try to put together. 22.5 is just kind of a lot, because for a lot of teams you're going to be giving up probably multiple contracts or things like that. And then if you're looking for him on a contending team, or if you're trading for him in the first place, you're probably expecting him to play for you. So, with the injury concerns, the reduction in quality of play this year, those are things that I would be concerned about. I think, actually, to be honest with you, unless it's a lesser deal like the one you were talking about, I would actually bet on him probably wind up getting bought out instead of traded, to be honest. Like, I think he has value, and I think he'd be good for a lot of teams, but I just think it's kind of hard to match that salary.
It can be tough to match. I still think they'll figure it out. So I would fall on the side of he'll get traded. You fall on the side of he gets bought out. I'll tell you what, if he gets bought out, there's going to be a bunch of teams interested in him because I think he is still a very good player. And the health concerns are largely mitigated if you're paying him a minimum salary anyway. It's just, hey, he's a bonus. He's kind of a freebie onto a roster. So we'll see what happens with all these guys, but some interesting players to keep an eye on the buyout market. Again, the buyout market does not pick up until after the trade deadline of February 6th, but just some guys to have in mind that could wind up being out there available on the NBA's buyout market after the trade deadline. Then we'll see some of these players starting to get scooped up. But everybody, give us your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think about our picks for the buyout market? Is there anybody else that you'd like to add to the list? Fire it off in the comment section. Until next time, see ya and stay safe.